In the fading twilight of the 20th century, a quiet revelation settled over the world, whispering that surveillance had evolved from crude tools into something nearly alive.
Governments once relied on agents, paper files, and human whispers. Yet all of that changed.
The threat
when new
no
fears
longer
rose
from
marched
the
in
ashes of the
uniform,
Second World War
for it
and
now
reshaped
lived in
global
shadows,
ambition. The
where
threat no
silence
longer marched in
carried
uniform,
power.
for it now lived in shadows where silence carried
cautious
power.
observation
What began as
slowly
cautious
transformed
observation
into an
slowly
unseen
transformed into an
network
unseen
without
network
borders.
without borders.
Early
intelligence officers believed they were merely watching enemies, not entire populations. But history has a way of twisting intentions, bending them into forms no one predicted. As technology emerged in the late 1940s, every invention felt like a doorway to control. Machines once designed to protect nations started learning how to observe without interruption. Each step toward progress also pushed the world deeper into a realm where privacy became fragile. Citizens walked freely on streets unaware that new eyes were being trained to follow their paths. The first satellites drifted above the Earth like silent guardians waiting for silent commands.
Into a realm
From their
where
cold
privacy
orbit,
became fragile.
they captured more than images.
You really think we should go back
for
to
they
the shoes?
captured the future of
Definitely,
surveillance.
they match the coat
In
perfectly.
secret rooms lit by dim lamps, analysts discovered that information had become the new weapon. A single intercepted message could sway a government, shift a border, or ignite a hidden conflict. And so the invisible eye
From
began
their
to widen,
cold orbit,
watching
they
not only
captured more
threats
than
but everything in
images.
between.
For they
With each
captured
passing
the future
year,
of
its
surveillance.
gaze grew
They
sharper,
are targeting
its
the
reach
clear.
grew longer, and its
This is
purpose
it.
grew deeper.
Information is
By the
new
early
weapon.
days of the Cold War, leaders realized they no longer needed to
A
chase
single
secrets.
intercepted message
Secrets
could
now
sway
came
a
to them,
government,
delivered
shift
by
a border,
machines that never
or
slept,
ignite a hidden
questioned
conflict.
nothing, and forgot nothing. Yet the greatest mystery was not what these systems could see, but what they could become. Behind every locked door in every intelligence
With
corridor,
each passing
quiet
year,
voices
its
debated
gaze
hidden
grew
futures.
sharper,
They asked
its
whether the
reach grew
power to
longer,
observe would
and its
safeguard
purpose
freedom
grew deeper.
or quietly erode it
Spy
forever.
plane imagery
No
confirms
answer
the missile
arrived.
site, sir.
Only
Every
the
secret
creeping
exposed.
certainty that they had unleashed
It seems we
something
no longer need to
irreversible.
chase secrets.
And
We
as the
simply need to
20th
look out.
century marched
Secrets
forward,
now came to
a
them,
chilling truth
delivered
emerged
by
from the
machines
shadows.
that never
You
slept,
did not need to notice
questioned
surveillance
nothing,
for it to shape your
and
life,
forgot nothing.
your choices, and your fate.
Yet
The
the
invisible
greatest
eye had
mystery
already
was
opened,
not what these
and the
systems
world had
could see,
already stepped beneath its silent
but what
gaze.
they could become.
As the Cold War deepened,
The convergence
the
is
invisible eye
unstable.
expanded
We
quietly,
can't guarantee the
weaving
timeline.
itself through
We have to
daily life.
proceed.
What
The risk
began
is
as
acceptable.
strategic vigilance
If we wait, we lose
soon
everything.
evolved into an
The power
elaborate
to observe,
architecture
will
of
it
constant
safeguard
watching.
freedom
In the
or
early
quietly erode
1950s,
it forever?
intelligence
shut
agencies
his mouth.
realized that knowledge was no longer enough.
No
They needed
answer
prediction,
arrived. Only
foresight,
the creeping
and the ability to
certainty that a
sense
group
danger
of
before
indigenous
danger even
elders had
existed.
unleashed
This
something
hunger for control led
irreversible.
them toward technologies that blurred the
And as the
boundary between
20th
safety and
century
fear.
marched forward,
Every telephone
a
line
chilling
became a
truth
thread.
emerged
Every
from the
radio
shadows.
signal a possible doorway into private
You did not
worlds.
need to notice
Machines
surveillance
listened
for
without
it to
emotion,
shape your life,
transforming human
choices,
voices into patterns
and
measured
your
by
fate.
suspicion. Officials
The invisible
justified
eye
each step
had
by
already
claiming the world
opened,
was too unpredictable
and the
to leave
world had
unwatched.
already
Yet
stepped
with every
beneath its
expansion,
silent gaze.
the watchers drifted further from the limits
the
once
Cold
meant
War
to restrain
deepened,
them.
the
They
invisible
told themselves
eye
that
expanded
temporary
quietly,
sacrifice of
weaving
privacy would
itself
guarantee
through daily
lasting
life.
national security. But history rarely
What
rewards
began
those
as
who trade freedom
strategic
for
vigilance
promises,
soon
even
evolved
promises
into an
wrapped in
elaborate
secrecy.
architecture of
By the
constant watching.
mid-1960s, new
In the
systems
early
emerged capable of
1950s,
tracing movement
intelligence
across entire
agencies
cities.
realized that
Silent
knowledge was
antennas
no
tracked
longer
signals
enough.
that people never realized they emitted simply by
They
living
needed
normally.
prediction,
No one
foresight,
needed to commit a crime
and
to
the
be
ability
studied.
to sense
Existence
danger
itself
before
provided
danger
enough
even
data to
existed.
examine. Files multiplied behind
This
sealed
hunger
doors,
for control
forming
led them
archives
toward
that chronicled
technologies
lives
that
without
blurred
asking
the
consent.
boundary between
Millions of
safety
unseen pages
fear.
recorded habits, friendships, travels, fears, and unspoken motivations. And though no single observer controlled it all,
I don't understand
the
why we are
machinery
here.
of
We haven't
surveillance
done anything
operated
wrong.
endlessly.
Please, we are just
Analysts
trying to
watched the
get
world
home.
unfold like
What
a
do these
map
readings
where
mean?
every citizen was a dot waiting to be
The world
decoded.
was too
The watchers
unpredictable to
insisted
leave
these measures
unwatched.
were defensive, crafted only to outpace foreign adversaries. Yet deep within restricted
Yet
rooms,
with every
a
expansion,
quieter
the
truth
diverse
lingered,
group of watchers of
heavy as
various
unspoken
ages and
confession.
ethnicities
When a
drifted
tool
further
becomes
from the
powerful
limits
enough,
once meant to restrain
someone
them.
eventually learns how to
Temporary
bend it
sacrifice
beyond
of
its purpose.
privacy would
And so the
guarantee
invisible eye
lasting
drifted from
national
foreign threats
security.
toward domestic whispers and hidden doubts. Anyone could become a target,
But history
not
rarely
because of
rewards
guilt,
those
but
who
because
trade
fear
freedom for
demanded more
promises.
information.
Even
Fear has
promises
long
wrapped
been
in
history's most
secrecy.
persuasive architect,
By the
reshaping
mid-1960s,
nations without
new
lifting a
systems
blade.
emerged,
Thus, the
capable
system
of tracing
grew,
movement
layer
across
upon
entire
layer,
cities.
until it no longer resembled protection, but dominion. citizens continued their routines unaware that the boundary between watcher and watched had vanished. By the dawn of the 1970s,
No one needed to commit a
surveillance was
crime
no
to be
longer an
studied.
emergency tool, but a
Existence
foundation.
itself provided
The world had
enough
stepped
data
into a
to
new
examine.
era, one defined not by open conflict, but by quiet observation. As the 70s unfolded, the silent network of watchers reached deeper, shaping
Millions
choices
of
people
unseen
never realized
pages
were
recorded
influenced.
habits,
What had begun as
friendships,
simple
travels,
monitoring evolved
fears,
into a system
and
that mapped
unspoken
thought,
motivations.
behavior,
Though
and
no
intention
single
with eerie
observer
precision.
controlled it all,
Every financial
the machinery
transaction,
of surveillance
every unusual
operated
pattern of movement,
endlessly.
every change in routine became a signal requiring interpretation. Analysts trained for years learned to read these signals, like historians reading ancient scripts carved into
These
fading
measures
stone.
were defensive,
The goal was no longer to
crafted
observe
only
threats,
to
but to
outpace foreign
anticipate them
adversaries.
long before they revealed themselves to the public. This ambition birthed programs so confidential that only a handful of officials ever knew they existed at all. Data flowed silently through fiber lines.
When a tool becomes
gathering
powerful
in
enough,
vaults sealed under
someone
concrete
eventually
thicker
learns
than
how
any
to
fortress
bend it
wall.
beyond its purpose.
Inside those dim rooms, the hum of machines
And
replaced
so
the
the
sound
invisible
of voices,
eye
as if humanity had stepped
drifted
aside for
from
algorithms.
foreign threats
These
toward
systems drew
domestic
portraits of
whispers
citizens
and
with
hidden
unsettling
doubts.
accuracy,
Anyone could
painting
become a
lives
target,
from fragments
not because
scattered
of guilt,
across daily
but because
routines.
fear
A
demanded
misplaced
more
phone call,
information.
a late-night drive, or an unexpected purchase could trigger silent reviews without warning. The watchers insisted that such measures guarded the nation from invisible enemies lurking beyond familiar borders. Yet even they struggled to deny that the machinery often drifted toward analyzing its own people more than its foes. By the late 1970s, oversight committees tried to pierce the secrecy, but found only
Deberíamos
locked
ir a la
doors and
playa más
redacted
tarde.
pages. For every document that surfaced,
By the
10 more
dawn of the
vanished behind walls of
1970s,
classification
surveillance was
stronger
no
than
longer
any
an
physical
emergency
barrier.
tool, but a
Critics warn that
foundation.
a democracy
The
cannot
world had
survive
stepped
when its
into a new
guardians
era,
operate beyond the
one
reach of those they
defined
protect.
not by open
But fear
conflict,
drowned their concerns,
but by quiet
reminding
observation.
leaders that one overlooked threat
As the
could undo
70s
decades
unfolded,
of fragile
the silent
stability.
network of
Thus,
watchers
the system
reached deeper,
expanded further,
shaping choices
adding
people
layers
never
of tools
realized were
capable of listening
influenced.
beyond borders.
What had begun
and
as
across
simple
oceans.
monitoring
Signals
evolved
bounced
into a
from
system
satellites,
that mapped thought,
tracing whispers
behavior,
carried
and
across
intention
continents,
with eerie
as though
precision.
distance no longer
Every
provided
financial
safety.
transaction,
The watchers
every
believed their
unusual
mission
pattern
righteous,
of movement, every
convinced they
change in
alone stood
routine
between
became a
chaos
signal
and national
requiring
survival.
interpretation.
Yet within the archives lay questions that no official
There it
dared
is.
voice aloud.
The correlation in the
questions
Gamma
heavy
Quadrant.
as locked iron chests.
It matches the
What
Sumerian
happens when
sequence.
knowledge becomes power no one
The
can
goal
supervise,
was no longer to
and
observe
secrecy
threats,
becomes a
but to
shield against
anticipate them
accountability.
long before they
And if the
revealed
watchers
themselves to
know
the public.
everything,
This
who then is
ambition
watching the
birthed
watchers
programs
themselves
so
as lines
confidential
continue
that
to
only
blur?
a handful of
In the
experienced
quiet hours before
African-American male
dawn,
officials
when
ever
the
knew
city
they
lay
exist
wrapped
at
in a
all.
veil of pale silver fog, the watchers moved like shadows across rooftops that had long forgotten the warmth of sunlight. Their presence left no trace, yet every silent step echoed a history etched in hidden archives. Long ago, in the final winter of the 20th century,
These systems
an
drew
unnamed
portraits of
directive
East Asian
was born,
female citizens with
shaped by
unsettling
fear,
accuracy,
sharpened by
painting lives
suspicion,
from fragments
and
scattered
sealed
across
behind
daily
doors
routines.
guarded by iron
A
ambition.
misplaced phone
No one
call,
outside
a
the
late
inner
night
circle
drive,
ever
or
heard
an
the whispers that
unexpected
accompanied
purchase
its
could trigger
creation.
silent
The
reviews
directive
without
claimed
warning.
it existed to protect,
These
but its
measures are
foundation
guarding
was
the
built
nation
upon
from
doubt and
invisible
secrecy.
enemies lurking beyond
Documents
these
buried
borders.
under layers of coded ink
Alert confirmed.
revealed operations
Rerouting
that
surveillance
outlived their
grid.
architects. Year after
Yet
year,
even they struggled
the
to
watchers
deny
learned to
that the
listen not
machinery
to
often
words, but to
drifted
the
toward
tremor beneath
analyzing
them.
its own people
By the dawn
more
of a
than
new
its
millennium,
foes.
their network stretched across continents
By the late
like a silent map,
1970s, oversight
drawing
committees tried to
invisible
pierce the
lines through
secrecy,
crowded
but
markets,
found only locked
remote
doors and
villages,
redacted pages.
and towering capitals. Eyes that never slept captured moments ordinary minds would never notice or understand. The people below continued their lives, unaware of the pulse of
A
observation
democracy
above their
cannot
heads,
survive
unaware that
when
every
its
hurried
guardians
step,
operate
every quiet
beyond the reach of
conversation,
those they
every
protect.
fleeting hesitation
If this
mattered.
threat is overlooked,
The watchers believed that
decades of
history
stability
itself could
be
shift from
undone.
a single
We
unguarded
cannot
breath.
afford to let our
Yet
fear
among them,
drown out the
a
concerns.
question slowly formed,
Thus, the
soft as
system
dust,
expanded
drifting
further,
through an abandoned
adding
hall,
layers of tools
a doubt
capable
that
of
crept
listening
into
beyond
minds trained
borders
to
and
resist
across
uncertainty
oceans.
and silence their own reflection.
confirmation
What
on
if
the target.
protection and intrusion were no longer separate, but threads woven into one cloth?
listening.
One
We have a
night,
confirmed threat
under
on the
a
grid.
moon thin to a
Activate
blade of
countermeasures
pale
now.
white
Sir,
steel,
the eastern
a young
seaboard is still
watcher
vulnerable.
hesitated,
I said now,
holding a
Lieutenant,
file
lock
marked
it
with
down.
symbols older than his service,
secret
older than the
fire
world he understood.
burns
The
bright.
weight of it felt like the weight of an entire forgotten century pressing on his hands. With a single
Documents
breath,
buried
he
under
opened
layers
it,
of coded
expecting
ink
procedure,
revealed
expecting
operations
certainty,
that outlived their
expecting truth.
architects.
But instead he found only fractured reports, faint
By the
testimonies,
dawn of a new millennium,
and questions without
their
endings.
network
The
stretched
deeper he
across
read,
continents
the
like
more
a
he felt the presence of something vast hidden behind every line. It was then he realized the Watchers were not simply observers of history, but prisoners of it, bound to a legacy that demanded unwavering loyalty even as it obscured its own beginnings. And in that moment, he understood that once you learn the truth, you could never turn away. The night deepened into a stillness so complete that even the distant hum of the city seemed to fade into memory, as if the world itself were holding its breath in anticipation. High above the sleeping streets, the young Watcher
female
stood alone
watcher
beneath the
hesitated,
trembling sky.
holding a file
He carried
marked
the
with
ancient
symbols
file
older
pressed
than
close
her
to his
service.
chest,
Older
feeling
than
its
the world
pulse
she
like a second
understood.
heart. A reminder that the truth he had uncovered was no longer simply ink on forgotten paper. Every step he took felt guided by a force older than any government he had sworn to serve. The fragmented testimonies inside the file hinted at a project buried in the earliest years of the modern intelligence age, a project that claimed to predict unrest before it was born, shaping events not through force, but through the subtle redirection of human intention. Historians would later describe those decades as restless and uncertain, but the file revealed a different history.
And in that moment,
one stitched together
a
by
middle-aged
unseen
East
hands
Asian
that
man
nudged destiny in
understood
quiet
that
ways.
once you learn the truth,
Watchers had not been
you could
created to
never turn
record
away.
danger. They had been shaped to cultivate it. He walked toward the abandoned observatory at the city's edge, where the first Watchers once trained beneath rusted gears and cracked lenses that still pointed toward distant stars. The air inside was cold, as though time itself had never bothered to warm
Feeling
this
its
forgotten
pulse
place.
like a second
In the
heart,
center of the hall,
a reminder
he
that
found
the
an old
truth he had
projection
uncovered
device covered
was
in
no
a blanket
longer
of
simply
dust.
ink on
Its
forgotten
metal frame
paper.
etched with symbols
Every
he
step a
recognized from the
middle-aged
final
South
page
Asian
of the
male
hidden
police
file.
officer took,
With trembling
felt guided
fingers,
by a force
he placed the
older
last
than any
document into the
government he had
machine and
sworn
powered
to
it on.
serve.
A soft glow emerged, followed by a cascade of flickering images that danced across the wall, revealing decades of surveillance captured without consent, without restraint,
Historians would later describe
without
those
pause.
decades as
Faces
restless
of
and
strangers
uncertain.
filled the room,
But the file
their lives
revealed the
unwittingly
Watchers had
tangled in a
not been
web they never
created
saw.
to record
The young
danger.
Watcher watched them in
They had
silence,
been shaped
feeling the
to
weight of
cultivate
countless
it.
forgotten stories, each moment proving that the line between protection and control had long since shattered. The truth struck him with the force of a long-buried echo finally breaking
The
free from
air
the dark.
inside was
The
cold,
Watchers believed they
as
were
though
observing
time
history,
itself had never
yet they were
bothered to
shaping it
warm
with
this
each report,
forgotten place.
each suspicion, each unspoken assumption that rippled outward into real lives and real fate. The machine's final projection showed a single sentence written in faint, trembling letters. Once the world learns it is watched, it will never be the same again. And the light dimmed, and the hall fell into silence so deep it felt like the end of an era itself. He turned off the machine, knowing that this knowledge could unravel everything he
The texture
served.
on this canvas
Truth,
is incredible.
he realized,
It is,
was
though
both
the colors
illumination
feel a
and
bit
fire,
muted compared to
capable
his
of
earlier
guiding
work.
or destroying the world. As he stepped outside, dawn broke across the horizon with slow, deliberate brilliance, casting long shadows that stretched like ancient warnings across the quiet earth below. He looked toward the waking city, knowing its people still walked under unseen eyes. And as the first
activity
birds
at the
called
red
to the new
markers is
morning,
escalating.
he whispered a vow
Confirmed.
carried on
Sending the
fragile
update
breath, not to reveal the truth, nor to bury it, but to watch the Watchers who believed they were unseen. For in a world built on silent observation, the greatest mystery was who watched last and why. And somewhere,
Once the world
deep within
learns
the
it is
labyrinth of
watched,
history and secrecy,
it will never
a new
be the
file
same
quietly
again.
opened.
He turned off the
Its
machine,
first page blank,
knowing that this
waiting
knowledge
for the
could
next
unravel
Watcher brave enough to
everything he
write what
served.
must never be read.